You and I have both experienced imposter syndrome at some point in our lives in some way or another. And it sucks, right? It feels inescapable when you're in a room, you're insecure, like you're looking around, like, should I even be here? Am I qualified enough to be here? And in a lot of cases, it prevents you from ever stepping a foot inside. You've got this sort of idea, this pursuit, this interest of yours you've always wanted to take to the next level. You've wanted to put more time and energy into. You're about to, let's say, pull in the handle to that room of opportunity. But this voice in the back of your mind says things like, who are you to try? You're not good enough. You don't have time for this. You don't actually care or enjoy this that much. And you pull your hand away. You turn away from that room of opportunity. You stay within your comfort zone and you chalk it up to a what if. And I don't know about you, but I have never done well with what ifs. They eat at you when you're at work, in class, you're in the shower, you're alone in your room, you can't fall asleep because you think, no, you dream about what you could have done, the life you could have lived. The frustrating part about imposter syndrome, the voice in our heads, is it didn't start with us. We weren't born with it. When we were kids, we freely tried, did whatever, whenever, without any sort of hesitation, any sort of fear. But as we get older, we start using social media, start consuming all these different kinds of content. We pick up these fears, fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, because we get caught in this web of comparisons. Comparison is rarely a game played between equals, right? There's always some sort of winner, loser, better and worse option. And as human beings, we're wired to avoid loss, and more specifically, the feeling that comes with it, the feeling of unworthiness. And it's this feeling that imposter syndrome is rooted in, this feeling that leaves us pulling our hand away and turning our back on that room of opportunity. Picasso's napkin, whether it's a true story or not, I have no idea. Feel free to fact check. But before I go any further, I want to share it with you. A woman approached Picasso in a restaurant, asked him to scribble something on a napkin, and said she would be happy to pay whatever he felt it was worth. Picasso complied and then said, "That will be $10,000. But you did that in 30 seconds, the astonished woman replied. "No," Picasso said. "It has taken me 40 years to do that." We all dream of becoming someone, but when we focus so much on being, whether we realize it or not, we compare ourselves to this someone and all of their experiences, their mindset, their habits. We can't help but shrink ourselves in comparison. We don't realize that in order to become, you've got to do. baker doesn't become a baker without baking, a writer without writing, a YouTuber without YouTubing. That's a verb, I have no idea. That someone started out where you and I both are. But the only difference is that they mustered up the courage, those few seconds of bravery to open the door, to step inside that room of opportunity, and they started doing. And more importantly, they kept doing, even when those around them stopped. Lower your standards. This is advice people give when it comes to dating, which entirely different topic to cover there. But it also holds true for creating, especially when you're just starting out. Not everything you create has to end up in a museum or art gallery. Not everything you create has to be for someone else's approval or recognition. If we want to truly create and, more importantly, be authentic, be our true selves, we've got to strive to do for the sake of doing, to create for ourselves, our inner child, and no one else. Which, if you have any streak of perfectionist or people pleaser in you, like I do, can definitely be a difficult mindset shift to internalize. But the more we're able to, detach and disassociate our self-worth from our work. Quantity over quality. We all strive to do quality work, but when we shoot for quality from the start, we figuratively shoot ourselves in the foot, because quite honestly, we haven't had time necessary to build up our ability to a point where we can produce quality work, which quality is so subjective according to each of our own tastes, our own palates, and whatnot. And as best as our best is, honestly, it's capped to a certain point, right? We all have certain baselines or places that we're starting from when it comes to creating, and we're not gonna be able to, from the start, turn a McDonald's napkin into a $10,000 work of art like Picasso can. And this is where quantity over quality comes into play, especially when we're starting off with any sort of creative endeavor. And there's this story lesson, whatever you want to call it, which captures it better than I really can. There was a pottery teacher named Brian. He had two groups. Group A, which for 30 days focused on creating one pot. Group B, which for each of the 30 days focused on creating one new pot per day. By the end of the 30 days, Brian took 10 pots, judged based on his perception of quality. And I'll let you take a moment to just sort of think about which group had more pots in those 10 Brian selected. If you guessed Group B, the one that made a pot every single day, yeah, you're spot on. Every one of those 10 pots came from Group B, because instead of banging their head against the wall trying to create a single pot that is stellar, instead they were able to benefit from making marginal improvements each day with each pot. And compounding, all that stuff, you know the deal. But just by focusing on marginal improvements over time, they were able to improve their quality, as opposed to just focusing on quality from the beginning. Improving our ability, and as a result our quality, is important when it comes to creative work. But From my point of view, it's more important to create in a way that feels good to us, to create work that we're proud of. Because when we're able to internalize this sort of mindset, we inevitably escape the web of comparisons. We stop playing the comparison game because when we're more focused on how we feel, how we think, we're not focused on anyone else. There's no comparison to be made. We're playing a game entirely by ourselves. I've taken a similar approach and mindset to my own creative projects in 2023, not just with YouTube, but also with writing, which I haven't mentioned this to you, but writing was honestly my first creative love or gateway drug, if we want to call it that. And I've always wanted to put more time and energy into it, but it was always, gosh, I'm focused on YouTube. I don't have time. I'll do it next week, next month, next year. Well, it's next year, and I have no excuses. And, on brand with what we've been talking about, I've focused less on being a writer and more on writing. I've put out a newsletter, which by the time you're seeing this video, I think there should be 3 or 4 issues out. And I've also been writing every day for the past 3 weeks or so, a little piece each morning and just putting out there. I'll leave links to both in the description if you're interested in checking either out. And I say all that to say, give yourself a similar sort of challenge, right? For 30 days, 30 minutes a day or whatever works with your schedule, just get into that consistency of just sitting down and working out that creative muscle and just see what happens. See how you feel. See if it's something that you want to continue on with or maybe switch paths or, projects, whatever it may be. And additionally, I want to segue here. I have this not so grand vision for my newsletter where I'd include a section for those of you watching to share your creative work. Because as we've talked about, it can be so hard to get over that hurdle of putting your work out there because of the fear of judgment, the fear of ridicule. So how cool would it be to have a space where you can share your creative work, your authentic self with strangers on the internet who have no idea who you are, but you all have this sort of collective understanding of the community you're a part of, which can be a pretty reassuring feeling to have. So if you're interested, shoot me an email on the newsletter link or address you sign up with. And yeah, I'd love to include your work. At the end of the day, imposter syndrome is deeply rooted in how we think and how we feel about ourselves. And overcoming how we think and how we feel about ourselves is no walk in the park. It takes a lot of work. So if we're able to shift our mindset towards doing, towards action, over time, we're able to build and cultivate the experiences, the mindset, the habits of that someone we aspire to be, that someone we dream of becoming.